As of the year 2023, the Beatles as an entity have been long gone. Though the band itself was only active for 10 years, what they achieved in that short period of time is widely considered to be some of the most influential in both music and popular culture. They've lived on in the homes of those who passed their legacy down to their children, and for those who came across them organically in record stores or on the internet. However, only half of the Fab Four remain after the tragic loss of both John Lennon and George Harrison. But just last month, on November 2nd, 2023, the Beatles released a new song called Now and Then. This song has a rich history behind it and will likely be the very last song the four Beatles will ever release together. And it could have never come to fruition without the help of AI. In this video, I'm going to discuss not only how this song was made possible, but I'll be doing a musical analysis and a lyrical analysis and pinpoint what makes this a Beatles song. But first, a really quick welcome to Music Theories. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to all things music, music theory, and music history. If you like this video, please leave a comment below and give it a thumbs up. If you really like this video, I now have a super thanks option available below. The Beatles broke up in 1970 when McCartney filed for legal dissolution of their partnership. They officially ended when John Lennon was the last to sign the papers on December 29, 1974, oddly enough, while on vacation in Walt Disney World. Throughout the 70s, several wealthy people offered the Beatles millions of dollars. I'm talking up to $30 million for a reunion concert, but it never happened. As the years went on, the group members continued to make music independently, though John did step back a bit to spend time with his son. And while they did feature on each other's records, the four of them didn't collaborate on any new track. The Beatles were no more. With the untimely death of John Lennon in 1980, it truly meant the end of the group. But in 1994, the three remaining Beatles wanted to compile a new multimedia collection, the Anthology. This was a massive project, made up of 60 songs in chronological order, a book about the history of the band, and a television documentary about them and the process of compiling the anthology. In addition, it included unheard outtakes, demos, and live performances, and even 2 new Beatles songs. To help with this process, Yoko Ono provided a cassette tape made by John Lennon, all unreleased songs that he wrote and performed at home. Real Love, Free as a Bird, and Now and Then. Along with producer Jeff Lynne, the band was able to produce 2 of these tracks in the likeness of the Beatles, something they felt honored John in a way that he would appreciate. However, the third song gave them a bit of trouble. The way it was recorded, which was Lennon simply singing and playing piano, created an issue when it came to mixing. The piano and voice were unbalanced. Sometimes the voice was louder than the piano and vice versa. This is quite typical on the unsophisticated microphone of a cassette recorder. They cut a section out of the song and changed some of the lyrics, so it does function sort of as a co-write, like they would have done back in the day. The team ended up scrapping this piece, since they couldn't successfully isolate the tracks or mix them in a way that would match the quality of any added instrument tracks. They released the Anthology project and Now and Then sat on a shelf collecting dust. George Harrison died in 2001, and as I'm sure you're aware, Paul and Ringo have remained active in music. Cut to the year 2019. Screenwriter, director, and producer Peter Jackson was given exclusive access to archival footage from the year 1969, the making of the Beatles' last album, Let It Be. Some of this footage was originally released in 1970, but the film overall was not well received at the time. For a long time, the story has been about the animosity between the Beatles in their last years, the rift created by Yoko Ono, and the legal strife between Lennon and McCartney. Jackson, who's a fan of the group himself, was quite nervous to see that dynamic within these clips. As it turns out, he felt relief in how the footage showed a more authentic picture of who these men were and how they interacted with each other, even in the last year of collaborating. They were friends. messing about and arguing the way siblings might. Even amidst the conflict, there was chemistry, laughter, and music made. And that's an important story to be told in regard to Beatles lore. But another important revelation that came from the process was an AI technology created and utilized by Jackson's team to separate voices from instruments in these older recordings while keeping the integrity of each. With this, Ringo and McCartney realized they could finish the long-lost song from the anthology. When the song was announced, it was received negatively in a lot of spaces, particularly because of the use of AI. I think many people imagined the song to be the equivalent of a deep fake in music, something created completely from AI, using other recordings of John's voice. But this isn't that at all. This is actually a wonderful example of how artificial intelligence can be useful to us. It's still John Lennon's voice and his song, even recorded from his own home. The isolated vocal track is functioning the same way a normal vocal track would, though the quality captured on a cassette tape is not something they can fix in a mix. They still had the guitar tracks that Harrison laid down in 1995. McCartney and Ringo added their parts, and the song was produced by Giles Martin, the son of George Martin. And with the help of this team and technology, the Beatles were able to finish and released what will likely be their very last song. All analysis and criticism aside, I personally think that's a really special thing. There's a mini documentary about the making of this song. It's only about 12 minutes long. I'll link it below if you're interested. Now, with that brief backstory, let's move on to the musical analysis. This song is set at 87 BPM. With a time signature of 4/4. This means there are 4 beats per measure and a quarter note is equal to 1 beat. The form of this song is pretty standard, though to me it's one of those songs where what someone considers the verse, someone else might consider the chorus. But from my perspective, the A section is functioning as a verse, the B section as a chorus, and the C section as a bridge. The song is in the key of A minor, but does modulate in the chorus. I'll explain as we get there. Here are the chords in A minor. The intro is 4 bars and is made up of only A minor and E minor over G. The E minor in this case is borrowed from the Aeolian mode. This concept is sometimes called modal interchange, and I'll be making a separate video about that in the near future. This pattern continues through the first 4 bars of the verse, but in the next 4 it moves from A minor to F to E major before going back to the A minor after A sus2. This section repeats once. The song then switches to the B section, what I'm calling the chorus. Here it modulates to G major. That means these chords are now diatonic. So this section starts on G major, which is now the 1 chord for 2 measures, then B minor for 2 measures, then E minor 7 for 2 measures. They then play A minor 7 to D twice, before jumping right back to the key of A minor in the verse. By setting up the pattern in the previous two measures, they're able to use the A minor itself as a pivot chord. The verse and chorus repeat once through, though this time the chorus only plays the A minor to D once. For this reason, I've marked this section as B prime. This expression is used when a section is very similar, but varies slightly in one way or another. In this case, it's all the same chords, but ends after 8 measures instead of 10. We then move into the C section, or what I'm calling the bridge. This is my favorite part of the song personally. It begins on D minor for 2 measures, then C over G for 2 measures. This pattern repeats once. Then E minor 7 for 2 measures, A minor for 2 measures. Then it goes to D major, which is borrowed from G major, and then to D minor. Though 4 minor is diatonic to the key of A minor, modal mixture of 4 to 4 minor is commonly used, and it's used in a lot of songs by the Beatles. This D minor chord and the G chord that follows is a part of a cadence sometimes referred to as a backdoor 2-5, which is actually a 4 minor to flat 7 cadence to resolve back to 1 minor. It's called a backdoor 2-5 because it's the 2 minor and 5 chords in the relative major key, but instead of resolving to its target from a fourth below, it resolves from a whole step below. The next section is another verse which has the same progression as the others. The outro section gets a little zing with the E7 over G sharp in measure 2. Going from G to E7 over G sharp to A minor creates an ascending bass line movement. After it ascends a second time, it begins a descending line movement from A minor to G to F to E before resolving on the A minor. This bass line movement, both ascending and descending, is another device that is used in a lot of their songs, and so it's also very Beatles. This descending motion is played in hits, which I've written out here, but the last chord is played rubato. This is a term that refers to the variation of tempo, usually led by the discretion of one person, typically the soloist or the conductor. This allows the freedom to speed up or slow down tempo to evoke particular emotions for the listener. In other words, there's no count. The person is feeling for the moment that is right to them. For the arrangement, I'm not going to transcribe each part just because I feel like it's beyond the scope of this video, but I'll give you a brief breakdown of what we're hearing instrumentally. The song begins with piano and acoustic guitar. It's pretty full to start because the piano is also playing the bass in its lower register. This continues into the verse as the vocals come in. And while there is acoustic guitar, the voice and piano are the central focus. In those last 2 bars of the first verse, the drums come in with kick on 1 and 3, and a rim shot on 2 and 4. The bass comes in on verse 2, as well as some light tambourine that will become gradually more active as the song progresses. At the end of verse 2, there's also a string section that enters. The first chorus is ushered in with some electric guitar, which initially just adds a little sparkle to the rhythm guitar. But the C section or bridge features a Harrison-style slide guitar solo and dense backing vocals. The song stays more or less at the same energy level throughout until that very last bit of the outro, where the ending features hits that lead us to our very last chord, which is sprinkled with tambourine and an octave slide on the bass. This chord chart I've made is available for free on my Music Theories blog. You can find a link to download it in the description below. Because of John's retreat from the public eye in the 1970s, we're not exactly sure when he wrote Now and Then, and thus will likely never know what it's actually about. In addition, some of the lyrics have been changed by the band. Many people have speculated, and some have even concluded, that this song is about the band, or possibly, more specifically, the Lennon-McCartney relationship. But I personally think without any tangible evidence, that's sort of in bad taste. We can definitely speculate and, dare I say, imagine what John Lennon might have been singing about. But to assign meaning as if it's fact just isn't my style. So I'll analyze these lyrics to the best of my ability while avoiding any assumption about the subject of them. I also apologize that I can't use actual audio clips for this video. The overall tone of this first section is positive. The speaker's recognizing the way or ways in which the person has benefited them. Make it through what exactly, we're not sure, but it appears to be something difficult. Word choices, even small ones, can make a big difference when writing a song. These lyrics are incredibly simple, but I can gather a lot of information by the word choice. For example, there's uncertainty about the outcome, made clear by the word if. But there is certainty that a positive outcome would be solely due to the assistance, encouragement, loyalty, whatever it may be, given by the subject. This section references the ups and downs within every type of relationship. I think just because he's using the word love doesn't necessarily mean it's romantic. It's important to mention that the love you portion of this was added by Paul McCartney, since the lyrics in the original tape are extremely muffled and unclear. In short, these lyrics are saying, no matter what, I'll never stop loving you. Again, words like must can tell us a lot about what the speaker's thinking. If we must start again implies that there is no such thing as failure in this relationship. If it falls apart, they will, or must, rebuild. There's certainty in the fact that they can rebuild because despite challenges, the love will still be there. In this section of the song, it's made clear that the relationship is broken in one way or another. Now and Then tells us that some time has passed since the initial parting. When the speaker is reflecting on the relationship in these moments, they're remembering again how the subject was so supportive and devoted, and they want that back. The new lyrics in this section suggest that the speaker is confident in the relationship rekindling at some point. I think there's a lack of consistency in this story. It's not clear what the status of the relationship is, but maybe that's the point. That's really all for the lyrics. There's not much to say about them otherwise, so I'm going to move on to the opinion piece of this video. If you're only interested in the analysis piece, this concludes that portion. Now, objectively, this is a Beatles song. I want to preface this with that. I have opinions, and so do you, but in the end, none of them matter all that much. The remaining members are happy with this outcome, and gave us this parting gift, which has tugged on the heartstrings of many, many fans. I'm only sharing my opinion here because I'm also a big fan of the Beatles, and I think it's fun to break things down. The parts that are most Beatles to me are the chord progression, the string section, the backing vocals, and the form. I've already touched on a few of these things, such as the use of the 4/4 minor and the line movement in the progression. The strings are really reminiscent of what we've heard in songs such as Eleanor Rigby, Strawberry Fields Forever, Yesterday, and I'm the Walrus, among others. These were written by George Martin himself. So Giles coming through on this was a huge piece of the sound. The backing vocals in the C section really struck a chord with me because they reminded me of some of my favorite songs by the Beatles, like Because, You Never Give Me Your Money, and Here, There, and Everywhere. And the form itself is similar to a lot of other songs by the Beatles, especially the early tunes. I'm not saying this form is exclusive to the Beatles by any means, but this form overall is the standard for this era of music. There's an A section that has some type of refrain, and then a B section that ushers back into the A section, and a bridge or solo section that introduces some new ideas and comes back around to the A section again. It reminds me of songs like I Feel Fine, All My Loving, A Hard Day's Night, and I Should Have Known Better. The parts that are the least Beatles to me are the lyrics, the production, and the guitar. I'm going to start with the lyrics because if you've been around this channel for a while, you already know that I'm a word nerd through and through. Overall, like I said, these lyrics are incredibly simple. They're not bad, just simple. This is something we've seen from the Beatles time and time again. I want to hold your hand. I'm in love with her and I feel fine. Let it be. Don't let me down. She loves you, etc. But we've also seen the other side of John Lennon that's very poetic and whimsical. Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. The clouds will be a daisy chain. Lying with his eyes while his hands are busy working overtime, etc. And while neither is correct, and I happen to like either side of this coin, I don't think these lyrics have the same punch as the simpler Beatles songs that resonate with everyone. Maybe this is a hot take, but without assigning the relationship with the band to this song, the lyrics don't really say much. I think personally, that context is the only one that would evoke any sort of emotion for me lyrically. But that said, when I imagine John writing this for the band, it does make me emotional. Production-wise, it's tricky because here we are using AI in a state-of-the-art studio in 2023, but John's vocals are from the 1970s, and they sound like it. In contrast, everything else on the record sounds really modern and polished. Of course, this isn't a bad thing, and I'm not the type of person that's opposed to digital sound recording technology or anything like that, but it's essentially impossible to get John's track to match that quality. I'm curious what gear they used to record it. We can see in the short film that they're using FabFilter EQ, which is a digital plugin, and a fantastic one at that. Equalizers in the days of the Beatles were handmade, so each machine sounded a little different than one manufactured the exact same way. This had a huge impact on the iconic sounds of the era. I have a video coming about this soon, so make sure you subscribe. But I have to ask, what if they had recorded this within the confines of what the Beatles were using in the 1960s? As in, all analog, with the same mics they would have used. Would that have been possible? What would it have sounded like? And would it have the warmth and the richness of their previous records? I'm not sure to what extent the song was recorded analog gear versus digital. And the last comment I have is in regard to the acoustic guitar parts specifically. To my knowledge, these were recorded by George Harrison in 1995. And they sound great, but again, they just don't sound very Beatles to me. And I'm not sure if that has to do with the production or the strumming pattern or whatever it is. I think the acoustic guitar specifically gives the song sort of a Radiohead or Oasis vibe almost. I did read quite a few opinions and came across some interesting points and criticisms. The reaction to the song in general, though, is overwhelmingly positive. The first simply being, why? Why do this at all? Do you think it's to remain relevant, though they surely always will be? Is it for completion's sake? Many believe the project should have just never been done. Another point being that Harrison had a very negative reaction to this song in 1995. The project was given the green light by his estate, who insisted his opinion was solely based on the quality of the demo. But a lot of people think otherwise. Another being that George Martin's long-standing belief was that things should happen in the moment, and we should appreciate them for what they were, rather than recreating them. He even told Rolling Stone magazine in 1976, "What happened was great at its time, but whenever you try to recapture something that existed before, you're walking on dangerous grounds, like when you go back to a place that you loved as a child and you find it's been rebuilt. The Beatles existed years ago. They don't exist today. And if the four men came back together, it wouldn't be the Beatles." This is certainly an interesting perspective to consider. Giles Martin stated specifically that he believed Paul was so passionate about this simply because he misses his friend John, rather than it being some type of publicity stunt. Many people prefer the original demo to the produced track, and I can certainly understand that, given my own thoughts on the production. Some believe that this works better as a tribute than it does a song, and it won't be included in their normal Beatles rotation. I have to say, it won't be included in mine. In regard to the music video, I think it was a really cool idea. It did spark some emotions for me, but I do think the AI gave a little bit of an uncanny valley feeling at times, and that threw me off for sure. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about this one. I really did enjoy this song, and I loved the buzz and the excitement surrounding it. This song indisputably brought so many people joy. The Beatles were a huge part of my life and music journey growing up, and still remain one of my favorite bands. I came across a comment that I think sums this up perfectly. This song is like finding an old photograph of a loved one that you didn't know existed after they've passed. You're just so happy to have something new to remember them by. Like I said, all of my opinions here are purely for fun, and I'd love to know what you all think in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching. I have more videos coming out very soon, so stay tuned.